live band, the tuba player would have died right in front of us. It's that hot out here. Time for our last sort of presentation and talk. Doug Partington is from Australia. He'll tell you, you'll know that right out of the gate, I think. He's going to talk about the very first Australian race car. It's the 1922 Wikner Ford Special. Doug, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for coming out in this dreadful heat. But to start the conversation, and this is a conversation, you're as involved as I am. Now, was there anybody here the last time I did this little talk? Oh my God. I've forgotten the last story. I'll see what I can do. Anyway, we'll start in the conventional fashion. G'day. How you going? Yeah, not bad. Yeah, good. I'm from Australia. Spelled S-T-R-A-L-Y-A. Right? And if you haven't got a dictionary, speak to my PA. She will sort of interpret for you. This is the story of two boys, no, actually three boys involved in this story, because I was 14 years old when I bought my 1922 model Wikner Ford Special racing car, and I didn't know what I'd bought. The car was built, as I said, in 1922 by an 18 and a 20-year-old boys, and an elderly blacksmith. The blacksmith was there to provide the expertise. The boys were there, like me, with the need for speed. Okay, you know, like Tom Cruise in Days of Thunder, the need for speed. So the story starts about 1915, 1916, when the boys were very young but very passionate about anything that was on wheels. They lived in a little town in the Blue Mountains called Allora. Allora is about 100 miles west of Sydney. The car was an excuse because they wanted to build aeroplanes. They couldn't put together enough money to build aeroplanes, so they built a racing car to show everyone their skills, their mechanical skills, their abilities, and their enthusiasm. Was that what I said last time? Good, good. So back to the main part of the story. The boys sold motorcycles while they were at school. Bought and sold motorcycles, so they got a few dollars together and they decided to build the car. I believe, from what I've found out, that they were great readers of Mechanics Illustrated. Do you remember that magazine? And I think that's where a lot of the stuff came from. But about 1920 they set about building the car, and they brought the remains of a Model T Ford home from the local wrecking yard. They pulled it home behind a horse, by the way, and started work. The blacksmith, I think, was really integral in the building of the car because he was the one who bent and shaped the metal, and he's left his mark on the car. You can find his hammer marks all over the car. I was terribly fortunate that my father was a very, very astute and forward-thinking man who'd grown up in Model T times. In fact, his brother's dealership sold Model Ts new, so Partingtons and the Model T have been together since about 1920. Dad became madly passionate about Model Ts, mostly because the town where the dealership was, now you didn't get this in this morning's story, I forgot about this bit, was a Catholic town, an Irish Catholic town. There's also a Methodist minister. Well, the Irish Catholic town, the bishop and that used to come around, and he had a fancy car. In fact, he used to get around in a Rolls Royce. But the Methodist minister had a very old Model T. Dad was the apprentice, so he got to look after the Methodist minister's car because the Methodist minister couldn't pay the bills. Right, so the apprentice got the job. So that's how we got hooked on Model Ts. Now, where was I, Elizabeth? Oh, she's busy. So anyway, the Wikner boys built the car, gathered all the parts in, the Rajo head, the Mercury front axle, the bug wheels, all the bits and pieces, and around about 1923 to 1928, they raced the car extensively around Sydney. They also drove it. We had in Sydney a track called Maroubra, And Maroubra, you should have heard of if you're a Beach Boys fan. Because in one of the songs the Beach Boys have, they mention Maroubra. Well, Maroubra was on the beach and they built this enormous racetrack to be like Indianapolis. The problem was the way they built it, every car that went too fast finished up in the marshland about 2 miles away, and numerous fellas were killed. It was called the Killer Track. But the very first race meeting was on the 5th of December 1925. My car is the only car that survives from that day. So that's that special little bit about it. When it was new, it wasn't a fantastic race car, but it's the last of the Mohicans. It's the one that's left, and that makes it very special indeed. The boys more or less abandoned racing cars because they were back on the aeroplane track, and they managed to get enough money together, built in Australia about 5 or 6 aeroplanes. I think they only had 1 engine or 2 engines, so the next aeroplane had the old engine in it, that sort of style of thing. But they came to Queensland where they got in league with a number of Qantas mechanics, and they got a lot of expert help there, built some aeroplanes, were very successful in their own way, and then decided to go to England, because you've got to remember that Australia is a penal colony still, and you know what a penal colony is? We're all convicts over there. We're not free men. We're not the free and the brave, we're the convict downcast. So they went to Mother England, built aeroplanes, had quite a successful career, but they couldn't pay the rent before they left. So they left the car as payment for the rent that they owed. Jump the war, 1958, there's a 14-year-old in Brisbane with the need for speed, desperately. Had to have a racing car. So at 14 years old, I answered an ad in the Brisbane Courier Mail that said, "Oh, racing car for sale, 20 quid." So I thought, this is my big chance in life. I'm going to make it. So I got on the train, then I got on the tram and another tram, and I got to see the car. Oh, I'm in love. You know, I'm swimming. So I'm in love. Back tram, train, home to mum, or dad first, because dad spoilt me rotten. Very, very good arrangement we had, dad and I. And dad says, "Oh, we better go and see mum." Well, that was the dreaded bit. But I thought, let dad do the talking. So dad fronts mum, and mum said, "How much have you got?" I said, £4. They want 20. She said, "I will put £10 in towards the project, not a penny more." And you knew with mum, there was no point going any further. I had 14 quid. So I get on the train and the tram and I'm back. Thank goodness nobody else wanted to buy the car. They didn't even want to look at the car. So they took my 14 quid. Okay, I own the car. How do I get the car home? Next question. So I get on the tram and the train, and I get home and I ring my mate. Now my mate's got a ute, but he hasn't got a proper licence. He's got a permit to drive to school 300 miles away. Right? So off we go, we get there. Bloody car won't fit on the back of his ute. We're trying to push it on and there's still too much hanging over the back. So John said to me, "We'll put it on sideways." We put her on sideways. So she's on sideways. We're heading home. There's a big bridge across the Brisbane River called the Story Bridge. We're trundling across there and there's this copper, 9 feet tall, gets out of his car, walks over to us, gives us the look, and I look down at his feet. They're about size 17, you know, and I think, oh, we're in trouble here. We're in, you know, this is very deep. This is going to hurt. So he said, "Who owns it?" And I said, "I own the bit on the back." "Who owns the car?" I said, "Him." And he says, "Which one of you two have got a licence?" Well, really, neither of us. But then John pipes up, "I've got a permit." So Don gets out his permit to go from their family property into Rockhampton, which is 300 miles away. He's down here on holidays, driving his car when he shouldn't be. Well, the copper stood back and we just stood there, you know, knees knocking like you can believe. And the copper finally looks at us, said, "Where are you going to?" And I said, "Salisbury," which is about 3 or 4 miles away. He just finally turned around, looked at us and said, "Piss off." Oh, so that's when I became a Reformed Catholic, you know. Spectacles, testicles, wallet and watch. And I'm right. And we got the car home and unloaded and everything else, and I'm very excited. I had my own racing car and I had it at home. I spent a couple of years then getting it going, and there was a big race meeting in Queensland that had all the international drivers there. And anyway, cut a long story short, I got it going, I got it there on a borrowed trailer with a borrowed car and all the things that you do to make it happen, and had a wonderful time, but I was too slow. It was pathetic. And I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do about this? I used to work at the wrecking yard down the road, and I thought, I'll whiz down there, get a Mercury motor, all the bits, I'll make it really shine, you know. Dad comes along, wise old Dad, as usual, very wise. Put it away, it's special, don't stuff it up, just put it away. I put it away for 30 years, and I got a phone call from a friend who said to me, "Your car's in this book." And I said, "Dad, no, not my car." He said, "It's your car." So anyway, I managed to get a copy of the book called The Flight of the Halifax. Now, the Wikner boys spent all that time in England building aeroplanes. After the war, they decided to come home, and they flew a Halifax bomber from London to Sydney. They bought it at war surplus, got enough passengers loaded on it to pay the petrol bill, and flew it home. They had forgotten all about racing cars and things. In fact, they built the very first caravan park resort in Australia, and it's called Halifax Park. Anyway, that's a side story. You know how you have sides on every meal? Well, that's a side. I've never known a country that has so many plates when you could just all throw it all on one plate and hoe in and eat it. Much easier. This having salad first. Salad goes on and you throw the other stuff on with it and you eat it. Right? Oh, you're funny people. And you talk funny. That's the bit that gets me. Don't you know about God Save the Queen and all that stuff, and the Queen's English and all that? I'm a monarchist, can't you tell? God save, no. Anyway, what have I done now? I need a prompt. I got to... Oh, yes, so I'm really hot to trot. The car's in a book and I've got some history. This car I've had since 1958, and this is about 1992. It's got history. It's all about it in the book, The Flight of the Halifax, and pictures. Wow. Oh, am I excited. So I got my A into G. You know how to do that? Your A into G. There, your bum into gear. Right, so I got the bum into gear, and I'm into it. I get it restored, and it's an instant hit. Nobody's got anything old, and nobody's got anything with the history like it. So I hopped in, got it done, refurbished it. I've never restored it. Every panel piece on that car except the seat upholstery is made by the Wikner brothers in 1922. So that's pretty magic about the car. Get the car all together, go motor racing, have a 10 or 15 year, very expensive period of racing, historic racing cars, win all the fancy prizes for the most collectible car, the most historic car and the most original car and all that sort of thing. And absolutely enjoy myself. But we went on an event one day and I made a slight mistake. And in 2008, I didn't scare myself, but I thought, I don't do that. I don't hit things. The tail of the car had hit a barrier, just touched it, but I thought, hey, that's the first mistake. That needs to be the last mistake, too. So I decided there and then, by the end of 2008, the car and I would retire, which we did. So the car spent then more years sitting in the garage and not being used, except when the grandkids had come around, we'd get it out, terrify the neighbours, somebody would ring the police, because you know over there we can't drive it on the road. No muffler, no mudguards, no this, no that. So we've got to put it away all the time. Two times around the block. First time around's okay, second time somebody rings, third time the policeman will be there. So 2 you get away with, get it in the shed, pull the door down. You're right. Except I did it one day during the week with my grandson. Elizabeth works at the little local Catholic school, and where I'm the reading instructor, by the way. I'm the reading instructor. I'm digressing, no tangentivising. So anyway, we do this tear up and down the road at lunchtime past the school. Who's out front on the fence but the policeman's daughter? So she goes home and says, "Mr. Partington went past today." I got away with it again. One day, yeah, that's another story. Somebody wrote into the paper about this dreadful person. No, they called the cops, didn't they? They called the cops. The policeman came along to this charity function and said, "Doug, got a problem. Somebody's rung up and said, you've been naughty, you've driven the racing car on the road." I thought, oh. So anyway, he helped me take the car home legally. A couple of days later, I wrote in the newspaper and apologised for being such a bad boy, and if the person who told the police would like to make themselves known to me, I would apologise to them personally. The whole town was wondering who dobbed me in, and people were coming up and saying, I didn't do it, I wouldn't dob you in. So the car was just sort of doing nothing, and around Christmas time, my son and grandson were there, and we decided we'd get it out and fire it up, which we did, and that was exciting, and we thought, we've got to do something. In 2013, I came to the Speedster and Racer reunion in Lincoln, Nebraska, and we were inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I thought, that's not quite fair. I've accepted an award and nobody's seen the car. And of course my son, who's got as silly as ideas as me, said, "Dad, we'll take the car. We're going to take the car over there." So that's how come it's here. But it was quite a logistic exercise. We had to get it on a ship and get it to Long Beach. We'd been made an offer that we thought was fantastic about getting it from Long Beach to here that didn't materialise, and my very best American buddy a good word? A good word over, he's a mate actually. Yeah, my mate Clep up there, that's Clep. Yeah. Clep drove from Greenville, Ohio to Long Beach and back again in 4 days, along with my mate over there, Carl, and they bought the car here for us. Otherwise, it was costing $50 a day. Thank you for them. It was costing $50 a day parked on the port, and that was getting to be a little bit of a indigestion. Elizabeth was, I was worried what Elizabeth was going to say actually. But anyway, all's well that ends well. We've had a fabulous career with the car, racing it. It's never broken down. I've never actually dented it. I'm pretty pleased with myself about the whole deal. It's been a wonderful thing to do in my life. I have this car, raced other cars, I've raced a Ferrari and done a lot of wonderful and magic things. But when you get in a Model T, you're in the real deal. You know, a Model T is the real deal. Every time I go off at some tangent on a side and do something else for a while, I come back and I sit in a Model T. Now I sit in either my race car or I sit in my dad's 1912 and I can talk to Dad. That's how we correspond. Okay? He passed away in 1980, but we have a connection between the Model T and up there. So we chat. You know, I say, it's got a noise, and he'll give me some ideas, and I get about fixing it. You know? And then I do the spectacles, testicles, wallet, and watch the thing again, and I'm a Reformed Catholic again. And what's the car like to drive? Fantastic. For a model, you wouldn't believe it was a Model T. It's incredibly well engineered. much better engineered than you would expect for the time. It has two chassis, one on top of the other, that make a primitive sort of space frame. The car is incredibly well balanced, fore and aft, side to side. It's dead square across the diagonals, and it weighs in at about 600 kilos. With me sitting in the car, it's just a tiny bit lopsided. If one of you young ladies around here in your bikini sat in there, you'd be spot on, right? You'd fit real well. No seat belts. Hey, that's when men were men. No brakes, not many brakes. You know those little dustpans they have on back of early Model Ts for the handbrake? That's the best we've got. That and reverse and the foot brake, but you need them all. If you have a look at the car, you see the rear drums are burnt black in places. They occasionally catch fire. Doesn't slow the car any better. But when you ride in it, it's amazing thing to ride in. You wouldn't believe it's a Model T, because if you're just sitting on, say, 50 miles an hour and you floor it, and it just gets up and goes, and it wants to keep going. It's a magic thing. Ted's been in it at reasonable speed. Even Barb's been in it at reasonable speed. Should have seen her hairdo after it. Oh, absolutely straightened her hair right out. Yeah, she didn't have to comb it through at all, right? Now, do we have any questions about the car or anything as silly as you like, because I'm a pretty silly person at times. Was it that boring? Yes, ma'am.
A lot of the people in Australia that when we went over and did a tour, they say T model. You say model.
Hey, Jerry.
Well,
Jerry.
I've picked up on that one before. It goes back to Dad at the garage in Kilmore. They sold Model T Fords. So I say Model T Ford. Yes, ma'am.
First you said quid, then you said pound. What's the difference?
Same thing. A fiddly did is a quid, which is a pound. Right, you got it? Yeah. We have two bob bits, and we have a zack, and a threepenny bit, and a penny. But now we have dollars and no cents. At least we don't have pennies. Bloody pennies over here. Everything's $17.99 and you get a penny change. And at the end of your holiday you give them to the Qantas girl on the aeroplane and she gives them to the Lost Kids Appeal or something. Dean, what have you got to say? This is the esteemed Dean Yoder. You've all heard about him. He's a mate of mine, and I'm not going to hold that against him. Oh, that's what I like to hear. I like people to hate me. It's really, really good.
When is it going back to Australia?
Sorry?
When is it going back to Australia?
About 2 years' time. Next year we want to go to the Speedster and Racer reunion. We want to go to the Old Car Festival. I want to drive it on the Milwaukee Mile. And I'd like to hopefully go to the vintage event at Indianapolis on the road circuit. That's the end of my bucket list. The bucket list ran out a long time ago. I just invented a few more. Anything else you'd like to know? No? Wonderful story. It's all lies.
What has your career been?
What has my career been? Interesting. I'm a motor mechanic, but I did that before I left school. That was easy. Dad was a motor mechanic and I just did that, did the exams and carried on from there. I've been involved, I'm actually an irrigation engineer, but I've spent most of my life in the motorsports industry, in marketing and merchandising, all that sort of thing. I managed a couple of race teams professionally. I worked for the Shell Racing team, which was the biggest one in Australia, which was part of Ford for a long time, and I finished my career as a teacher. What happened was, motor racing from a professional point of view found there was no course for young people to do in engineering that could take them into a professional racing team. So the network, I suppose, of car races, the professional side of it, asked me if I would get involved, and I wrote the curriculum for the study of motorsport as engineering to be taught in technical colleges. So that's what I did with a lot of that. It's on the next bucket list. I can only sneak a bit on at a time. It's near Milwaukee. Yeah. Look, I'm the original bad penny. You'll never know where I might turn up. Right? That's the plan. Hey, life's for living. Right? You're a long time dead. I'm not going to sit on the front veranda and wait for God. He can wait for me. That's my whole philosophy. Now, that's why I'm a Reformed Catholic, you know, spectacles, testicles, wallet and botch. Anything else, please? No? Right. If you had enough, good. You may go now. Class dismissed.